first half of the conference, and already, feels people are getting a little tired. As a lot of people have not joined us here. I've had, dubious feelings as I was listening to the earlier panels. Because everybody was talking the same sort of stuff they were talking 2 years ago and last year, especially at the first panel. Everybody was like, yay, we're just, just around to turn the corner, it's going to get better. I've been here for a year and a half, and I only see like things getting worse, and they're getting just worse and worse, and there's nobody's fault. It's not like the president is telling the ministers, do something to kill the economy further. It's the little decisions, like not liberalizing the currency regime, not doing the liberal taxes last year. Right now we're going to talk about privatization, which I think is actually one of the main things that can actually unlock FDI going into Ukraine. Like Ukraine should be getting at least $1 billion a month in FDI right now, at least $1 billion a month. Run rate for this year is about $4 billion a year, which is nothing. If we were to grow like Poland or Czechoslovakia, we should be getting something like $30–40 billion a year during their heydays. So here we are sitting with $4 billion a year in FDI, and everybody's acting like, oh, it's smooth sailing. Especially the guy from the central bank. I was shocked where they're talking about macro stabilization and how stable this country is. This country has just fallen off the cliff. The average salary is $100 a month. What stabilization can you talk about? If there was $10 a month average salary, would they be saying, oh, this is great stabilization for Ukraine? Like, the only thing that this stabilization is doing right now is preventing the country from actually bouncing back up, because if you stabilize it at this low point, that means you don't give it a chance to get back up. But anyway, I just vented a little bit, but the reason why I wanted to to set the tone for this discussion is because I want the esteemed panel members to convince me that there is actually privatization will happen this year and that it is possible, because right now I see that this is one of the main things that can unlock investment in Ukraine, but frankly, as somebody who is somewhat on the inside, I'm very skeptical that there's actually any privatization will happen this year. I mean, I think that we should have at least $2 or $3 billion worth of assets. That should be the goal, to be privatized within like the next 6 months, and I don't think it's going to happen. But let me introduce the members of the panel and give them the word so that they can convince me and you that this privatization is actually going to happen. All right. So to the left of me, I have distinguished Ulyana Shtybel, who's a academic from the States, and now been doing practical work. She's been a member of the American Chamber of Commerce, helping to push business development here. Now she's head of representation of Warsaw Exchange in Ukraine, so she is actually actively pushing for Ukrainian companies to reach to the international financial markets. So next to her, we have Andrii Gaidutskyi, who is a member of the Property Fund of Ukraine. So this is where basically he is the deputy, I think, head of the fund, which is chaired by Belarus. Like the fund actually holds all the properties, the government properties in Ukraine, and they're actually responsible for putting them on privatization and opening this up. So a lot of the questions will be to you. So next we have Andrii Boitzun, who is a deputy head of the Center for Economic Studies. It's a pretty good think tank in Ukraine, headed by Gleb Vyshlinsky. You probably heard about these guys. Maria Repka is also there. These are very sort of advanced thinkers, and he is, sort of member of the academia here. So next we have Olga Bukreeva. She is CEO of Government Port. It's an interesting project. She'll actually do a short presentation about it. This project actually tries to digitize data, like state-owned data in Ukraine, like everything from, wires under the ground to, pipes to buildings, and so help people also, during the eventual privatization phase. And last but not least, we have Jocelyn Guitton, who is first secretary of the delegation of European Union in Ukraine. So with that, I think I will pass to Jocelyn, because I painted a bleak picture, and maybe you from the European Union have a more upbeat view. So Jocelyn, the floor to you.
Thank you. I will just a few global words of how we see the privatization process from an EU point of view. I will not go too much into the details because my colleagues will probably do it. First of all, why is it such an important process? I think you're absolutely right. It's one of the very few processes where you can achieve several very important objectives with just one instrument. Very often in economics, you say that you need one instrument for one objective. Here, with the privatization process, Ukraine can achieve several objectives simultaneously. First one, of course, the most obvious one, is to bring revenues to the government. Maybe we should not overestimate the revenues that Ukraine can generate from that, but still, in any case, first of all, by privatizing state-owned enterprise, Ukraine could first of all stop to lose money because many of such companies are loss-making right now, and if they were better managed, they could clearly make profits. And second, you can sell them to private investors and generate money for the budget. That's the first thing. Second, it's quite, it clearly makes an economic consensus today that usually the state, the public authorities are not the best managers of private businesses. That's quite logical. It's the role of business to do business, it's the role of the state to do regulation and to implement it. These are different things, and usually private investors manage businesses better than the state. So normally, we can expect that by this privatization process, well, Ukraine could generate some growth, some economic growth, and benefit jobs for the whole economy. Third point, it's a great way to attract foreign investors. We know that when foreign investors come, they do not come only with money, they come with technologies, with transfers of knowledge, with pressure, with best practices. Quite often, foreign investors are less likely to play corruption schemes and so on and so on. So that's quite an interesting point too. And of course, privatization is also a way to tackle corruption, simply because the less links you have between public authorities and business, the more difficult it is to also have corruption schemes. So that's, I think, maybe the four most important goals you can try to achieve. One thing I would like to stress is that maybe this process is one of the very few fields where international donors, the international community, as we like to call it, IMF, EU, US, World Bank, EBRD, and so on, are expecting the Ukrainian government not to rush on reforms. Because in this case, the process is probably more important than the result. What I mean is that a badly managed process of privatization would be disastrous. Because if you try to sell companies which have not been audited, of which you don't even know the value, if you try to get rid of state assets immediately without properly auditing them, without making sure that it's publicly known abroad that that there is a privatization process going on, then it's very risky that you would move from a state monopoly to a private monopoly where you have oligarchs acquiring at cheap price this kind of state-owned enterprise, which would be probably the worst outcome possible. So clearly the process is key, and all the reforms linked to the management of state-owned enterprise, which are ongoing now, is a very important first step, probably which is absolutely critical if we want to have a positive outcome. So precisely, all the international donors are trying to provide technical assistance, to provide support, financial, technical, to help to achieve this objective, to have a proper, efficient, and successful preparation process in order to move forward with the privatization afterwards. One thing I would like to stress as well, well, I cannot speak on behalf of the business. I'm a technocrat, so you are the companies, you are the businesses. But one thing I would like to stress as well is that when we talk about the privatization process, it's not only about the process as such, it's also about all the environment. You cannot have an efficient privatization reform if you don't have an efficient competition authority. If you don't have a competition authority which makes sure that indeed when you start to sell state-owned enterprise, they are not acquired by monopolies or by oligopolies. That you make sure that it creates more competition, not less competition. Second, Well, you need to make sure that we move towards a rule of law system. It's very easy to say. It has been said already today. It's repeated day after days. But the thing is, how can you expect to attract investors if there is a risk that foreign investment are not protected, that you have companies which can be raided by oligarchs in this country and so on. So I could multiply examples, but what I would like to stress is that what will make this process successful is not only the process as such, but all the reforms, all the broader reforms of justice, of administration, of customs, of tax authorities, and so on. It's a very general introduction. I don't want to take too much time.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, one thing, I mean, I'll just liven the discussion. I agree with you that process is essential, but I think, why Ukrainian assets right now are trading at 10, 20 cents on the dollar, right? It's not just because of the lack of process, it's the overall, lack of, this currency movement, like lack of capital accounts. So I think that basically those things, like the macro things that a central bank and the Ministry of Finance are not doing enough, that actually has a more damaging effect than the actual audit at one or the other particular company. You know what I mean? This is like, that's what to me. And the question that I wanted to ask you, another panelist as well, what is your ballpark figure? How much in dollars is going to be privatized in Ukraine this year? What is the value of privatization this year? What's the market?
I don't want to make any.
Okay, you don't want to make, so, abstention from the European Union. Okay. Next, I pass the table to Andrii Gaidutskyi from the fund. Maybe he will have a number for how much is going to be privatized this year. So Andrii, take the floor. If you have a presentation, you can put it up and maybe talk about it.
Hello to everyone. I'm Andrii Gaidutskyi, Deputy Head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Thanks for inviting me here. Thanks for everyone to come. Yes. Privatization topic is very important these days, not only for Ukrainian society, but for international donors, for IMF, because they don't want only to help us, they want us to help ourselves, yes, and privatization is one point how we can do it. So in terms of privatization process, the team of Igor Belous is already almost 1 year here in State Property Fund. I hope that very soon he will make a big press conference concerning what he has done for this year. So I will just briefly explain what we did. Yes, we didn't start big privatization yet, but we hope to do it during next few months and second half of the year. So what we have done already is first we put electronic auctions. So now it is very easy and transparent. You can choose the assets we are selling on the website. You can choose the commodity exchange, and then you can participate in the auction. So second, what we have done and what we have started is Dutch auctions. We have very much assets that is not impossible to sell on the starting price, so we decided to decrease the starting price. The third important issue, we changed the legislation for big privatization. So now foreign investors could participate in buying all state stake. It means that we don't need to sell about 5 or 10% of the state-owned enterprise on the local stock exchange. As you know, local stock exchange is underdeveloped. It is not really market, and we believe that we have to sell all state stake to one strategic or international investor. We also redeveloped our website. Now it becomes like a web portal, so where we have about 900 assets, units, state-owned enterprises that is going to be sold during this and next several years. And concerning your point that State Property Fund holds all state-owned enterprise, it is not true. Actually, about 95%, maybe 99% of all state assets and units belongs to different ministries, different state enterprises. We're just asking them to transfer the shares of these state-owned enterprises that we can sell it on transparent way. You know, Cabinet of Ministers, Prime Minister, several times we had meeting with them, with different ministers to ask to transfer the shares, but each time they have some problems why they cannot do it right now. So we hope with the new Cabinet of Ministers, the process of transferring shares will be much more quicker, because usually to transfer shares to state property fund to prepare for privatization, it is quite 3-4 months, no more. But now we have some enterprises transferring their shares for more than a year. So about privatization itself, we have big privatization and small privatization, and it is in parallel. Small privatization is like units, small assets in villages, small cities, it's all over around Ukraine. So for this year, we are going to sell about 380 this kind of assets. As for now,
Have you sold already?
as for now, I think we sold about 40.
Value?
For dollar value, it's about $1.5 million. Yeah, so it's very small. But it's in process. It is not proper to say the privatization is not going. It is going, but this asset should be sold 10, 20 years ago when it has to a good value. Why it is so inexpensive now? Because it's very old. It is 50 and more years old. For big privatization, we hope to start it now by selling Odessa port plant. And we hope this event will be on July. Now it is on finish line. So we put all documents to Cabinet of Ministers. They have to announce the starting price, the fixed conditions. And we have a very good team of advisors for preparing it. It is a UBS leading advisor. It is Ernst & Young and Baker McKinsey as legal advisors. So it's on very high and top level participants, members of a team we have. So after Odessa port plant, we hope that second part of the year, we will have big energy privatization. If you don't mind, I will show you some slides concerning energy privatization. I'm sorry it is in Ukrainian, but please take a look. So as for now, we are going to sell 3 or 4 CHP. It's in Kherson, Nikolaev, Odessa, and Dnipropetrovsk. So for now, we have PricewaterhouseCoopers, who is preparing it and doing due diligence. We have fundings from UK, DFID, and so thanks for them. And also we have 6 Oblenergo for privatization in Ternopil, Khmelnytsky, Nikolaev, Kharkiv, Cherkasy, Zaporizhzhia. It is preparing by Deloitte, and we hope that in the end year or in the beginning of next year we will also have Centroenergo for privatization, and we hope that Deloitte will also do preparing it as an advisor, but we will also have an investment banker for it. As for now, Oblenergo is funding, privatization is funding by USAID. So we hope that very soon USAID will have tender to select the investment bank as well for this privatization. So about Oblenergo, we've already finished the first phase. It's high-level due diligence, VDR and VDD. And on second level phase, Deloitte already chosen, and we have assistance from USAID for this privatization. And this is the timeline. So we hope to start with Western Ukrainian Oblenergo. It's Khmelnytsky and Ternopil. It is in best condition, actually. So we hope we can sell it on very good price, and we will a lot of steps on auction. There are already some international investors interested in it, for example, from Hungary, from Poland, even from United Arab Emirates, and from India as well. And then Ternopil and Khmelnytsky will be in October, it's auction day, Nikolaev and Kharkiv in November, and Cherkasy, Zaporizhzhia in the end of November, maybe in December. But in Cherkasy and Zaporizhzhia, we have some little problems, we have to solve it before privatization. And Centronego, still we have to wait till the investment banker and the advisor will be selected by USAID. But again, we believe that privatization of Centronego should be in just after heating season, so in approximately in March, April. And we have some interesting investors from Japan. We know that even Toshiba were interested in it because they are providing, they are building special turbines for Centroenergo. Yeah. The process of privatization is quite simple. So first after the announcement, you just have to come and bring your documents. Then you sign NDA. And you can do a due diligence. We also decreased the level of guaranteed deposit. It was 20%, now it's only 5%, because many international investors were asking why it's so high. We understood that, for example, if OPP will cost about 500, so the deposit is $100 million is too much, so 5% is quite okay. Then you can participate in the auction. It's very simple auction, just raising your hand, and the price will be increasing by about 1%. So it's about $5 million for OPP, for example. And after that, we are going to sign SPA agreement, and we will wait release from anti-monopoly committee to agree this contract. SPA. So, and about 30 days after the auction, the investor should pay all sum. So this is very shortly about privatization, what we are going to do, but believe me that we are trying very hard to convince the government, to convince the ministries to start this transparent privatization. So State Property Fund works very closely with international organizations. We have special privatization working groups where we have directors of, local directors of EBRD, IMF, USAID, representatives from US ambassador. So we try to show that government of Ukraine on behalf of State Property Fund tries to be as transparent as possible, but bureaucracy doesn't help us to be quicker. Thanks a lot.
I want to say, this is actually, to me, it seemed like one of the better, presentations so far. And, even though I'm a skeptic, I think if you manage to sell half of what you had on your presentation, this is going to be, one of the best years in Ukrainian history in terms of privatization. So, okay, so we sold $1.5 million worth so far, but hopefully billions are coming in the second half of the year.
I hope we will have up to 1 billion.
All right, let's up to 1 billion. That's a good call. Yeah. All right, thank you. So next, I will pass the table to Ulyana. So Ulyana worked on both sides, on the government side, like on the U.S. government side, trying to push the Ukrainian government. Now she's on the private side in a Polish exchange, trying to get Ukrainian companies to actually become public and list abroad. So I just want to ask you a question, like, we're talking about, private businesses now trying to raise money. What sort of dynamic are you seeing there?
Okay, hello. Nice to be here and have this opportunity to share a Polish experience on privatization. Poland actually is a great country, our neighbor, which is helping for Ukraine with all these privatization processes and raising the capital for companies. And the privatization process actually started right immediately in 1989, along with the liberalization in Poland. And what I can say, it's definitely need to be done in a proper way, especially it need to be done very fast without any kind of procrastination, because as we know, like procrastination, which we had in Ukraine for 25 years, it's lead basically to obstacles which are stepping in each time. So I really hope that the state property fund would proceed fast with this, and we will have this privatization this year. I really hope for this. And I will share with you a bit how the privatization was happening in Poland, because it's really great to see how Poland succeed on this. And so basically, like, is the privatization, has a focus on transformation of economy and given acceleration of the economic growth in a country. And also acceleration and growth, boost of competitiveness and growth of the capital market. So privatization in Poland have been done in three methods. That was direct privatization, indirect privatization, and mass privatization. In Ukraine, we probably lose already a time, so we don't have the opportunity to do this mass privatization, because basically no one would believe again in this as ownership certificates. But in Poland, that was definitely a great experience, because most of these certificates, which were in hand of the civil society, they were transferred, they're either sold for profit or transferred as shares in national investment funds. And these funds actually raise the capitalization of the Warsaw Stock Exchange by 30%. And the second program was a civil shareholding program. That was a program which involved the Pole to open the private accounts and actually become a part of, become a retail investor on the Warsaw Stock Exchange. So basically, like in Poland, the capital market was developing because of this, all of this intensification of the privatization in the country. And in Ukraine, it definitely would be good to have such program with involvement of the employees, like employee leasing program, which was done in Poland. And because we also need to build this corporate and ownership culture within the employees of the companies, because they want also to be involved in this. And I still believe that we can prepare such program for Ukraine, even we will not do this, probably the ownership certificates. And so basically Poland probably had even the worst conditions, because Ukraine already done a lot in this 20 years by legislation. This legislation just need to be properly executed. So in Poland there was over the 8,000 of state-owned enterprises which had a share in GDP over 75%. In 25 years, this number decreased to 80% of in public sector in GDP. So basically, like right now, we are on the right step, and I know that the state property fund are doing very well with preparation of company to privatization, and we seeing really huge opportunities for Ukrainian companies to gain a good corporate governance, to get prepared to the privatization as direct privatization to the strategic investors, as well in indirect privatization through the IPO. But the IPO privatization, it's definitely would take some time for companies to improve their management and efficiency, so then the IPO can be done in a proper way. We as the Warsaw Stock Exchange definitely can offer a good capitalization of such proper companies in Ukraine. But we understand that it may happen like in a couple years. It's just a matter to do it really in a good order. So we are open for partnership, and definitely would be happy to share our visions and our advice to the State Property Fund and to help it to do privatization good in Ukraine. Thank you.
Okay, so let's do some predictions. So how much money will Ukrainian companies raise on Polish stock exchange next year? This is being recorded, right? This is on the internet.
If a companies if a state-owned enterprises would do some the privatization through the IPO, so we believe that they will gain some couple of
Million or billion?
$billion. It's
Billion,
definitely
no.
like because revenue through the IPO in Poland was about like 36 billions of all companies which were privatized in Poland. So euros, so it's definitely a huge number, because basically investors are ready to invest through the Warsaw Stock Exchange to such companies. So definitely, if a right company will be on the Warsaw Stock Exchange listed, so they will get.
No, this is a good, very optimistic answer. I would put the market more like closer to maybe 100 million, but yeah, I'll take 2 billion. You know, this is a good answer. So okay, so now we're switching to Olga Bukreeva, right? So Olga is actually CEO of a government port. It's a company that tries to help, you know, privatization, whatever, by putting together data on the Ukrainian state-owned assets. So Olga, if you can, like, you know, not too long, you know, but you know, give us your presentation, that would be great.
I'm not going to speak English, so my presentation is in Russian. So if you don't mind, so please follow the interpreters. And whatever have been mentioned by our colleagues, so we face a lot of problems with the documentation and with the procedure. All the way is inherited from the Soviet Union period, and the privatizations happened within a couple of years. So the whole legislative background was not very much logical, and because of that, a lot of bylaws and regulations are still very much difficult and sophisticated, and there are certain legal controversies, and it's very hard to understand. Even our lawyers have trouble to understand it, and international lawyers have trouble when they are trying to understand all the documentation when they are doing due diligence for the company. As of today, our company, we have developed the platform. It is called Ukrainian Asset Management Platform, and we take into account the structure of the government, of the public governance, and we take into account all the documents that are needed just to make sure these documents are legally okay, and taking into account that the registers of the property and types of the documents are not really in compliance with the international practice, of management of assets. We are trying to utilize all the details in our platform, and the register of government property, and taking into account the objects that are underground, on the ground, and whatever. So buildings, premises, land plots, temporary constructions, even highways, railways, power lines, and whatever is specified in the balance sheet of the major corporations. and state enterprises. And the asset management data, we incorporate all the necessary parameters that are needed and specified in different archives. All the technical and legal details, all the measurements, and these documents are not consolidated within one document, so all these details are specified in different documents. That's why our offer is to provide using this single platform, and we key in and input all the data. This data used to be stored in BTI, Bureau of Technical Inventory. And then Ministry of Justice took over this work, and the data with respect to the property rights. So investors have to look into different databases. Maybe I'll summarize to these people. We don't need all these details.
Okay, guys, I will just say a little bit in English because I think it's going to be faster than going through the whole presentation in Russian. I've seen a demo, I've seen a demo of this product beforehand. It's a very interesting effort that sort of tries, like Google Maps, combine sort of all state-owned assets, like basically take all the paperwork, and this is like tons of paperwork that Ukraine has, and attempt to digitize it and actually tie it to the geolocation. So basically for every document, translate it into English, add a geo tag, show it on the map, like where this actual object is, what's underneath it, all of these things. So right now they have digitized Kharkov region, and they're looking to digitize more of Ukraine. So I think this is something that can be very useful in terms of when you're buying a state-owned asset during the privatization, like whether you can check what sort of legal cases are happening on this asset, like are there legal claims against it or whatever. So this is quite an interesting effort, and Olga, thank you so much for presenting it here, and I'm sorry I interrupted rudely, but I think, it's, the presentation is already, the whole thing, we need to move it on. And with that, I will go to...
But I just wanted to tell you one more thing. The work that we were doing since 2009, we have a lot of information, and this information will be very much useful to international investors and developers, and our stakeholders are ready to cooperate. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so, and to finish our panel, Andrii Boitzun, can you say so Andrii is a member. This is actually one of these sort of more advanced think tanks in Ukraine that basically, they're like, bees cross-pollinating. They go to the central bank, they go to the various ministries. So Andrii, I sort of want to ask you the question, like, how real do you think, the plans that the state fund managed here, like, what is your view as an expert? Where are we going to be by year end?
Well, I would like to believe that these plans are real, but I think that we need to put things in context as well. So if the fund succeeds in selling, let's say, the top 3 of their list for 2016, which is the Odessa port plant, Sumy Himprom, and Centrenergo, that will be already not bad. Actually, it will be great, although these companies should have been sold last year. Now, while statements were made that they would be sold last year. So, still, I think what we're discussing now are the immediate priorities for 2016, but it is also very important to shape the understanding that we are overlooking the most important part of the state property that is not being discussed now. So one of the things is that is little acknowledged, that most of the value that the state holds in public assets in this country is in real estate, and that requires making a proper inventory of what the state knows little of what it owns in that area. And the really big companies that need to be privatized are not yet on the list. And I'm talking about companies such as, for example, the state-owned banks, such as Ukreksimbank and Oshadbank. I'm talking about Ukrhasvodobuvania. I'm talking about ports and things like that. I agree with Jocelyn about the priorities that you've mentioned in the beginning of your presentation. I'm not sure if they were prioritized according to the, but I wish to make actually two comments on the priorities. I would have a similar list of priorities if I were to make one, but I would put revenues for the government budget last for two reasons. One is that what is really important for Ukraine as an outcome of privatization is creating a more efficient economy due to, on the one hand, due to more efficient enterprises, but also due to competition. And most of the interesting companies to be privatized in Ukraine are in the sectors where the state used to provide services through a government-owned corporation. So that drives more than just privatization, drives more the sector reform, introduces competition and regulation and things. And second, when you mentioned corruption, I think when you acknowledge that the state is the largest owner of assets in this country, you also realized how vast the corruption problem is. And therefore, if you effect privatization, you will purify the political system, and the politicians that will, let's say, that will remain after privatization will be able to focus on the objectives that are more aligned with the objectives of the citizens of the country. So protecting consumers. And
Andrii, I think, this is, we're running out of time. I mean, this is, I'm sorry to sort of interrupt you half-word. I want to open it up for at least a couple of questions.
But I think, Roman, I think there is one we agreed that I would not use the presentation, but I wish to show one slide to understand the reluctance, and that answers your question, I think, why it's not going to happen. This is the slide that one slide that I was going to show. The popular support for privatization is very low. So if you conduct a survey, people will say that state property reform is very, very low on the priority list. And at the same time, the number one problem that they will mention is fighting against corruption, which means that they see very little in the two problems. And I think that the government should take the initiative in explaining how important it is, because there is very little understanding of that.
Desire in Ukraine to actually build capitalism here and build the market, and I think this is actually the root of all problems. If you ask any government officials, what are you building here? They'll mumble something about socialism, responsibility. The former prime minister, when asked about the role of business in the economy, he said, the role of business is to create employment and pay taxes. He said zero about profit, about making money.
Was well-known like that for Bologna, for the music.
Will come and arrest your servers, right? So, anyway, do we have a couple more questions? Because we actually do have a rare opportunity to ask the State Property Fund a question. And do you have a question? Do we have the microphone?
To save time, I'm going to be speaking in Russian, because my English is not as good. Well, the biggest part of the Ukraine's economy is already privatized.
Practically all Ukrainian economy is private. Yeah. Why only privatization? Do you have any recommendation to accelerate the Ukrainian economy? Why only our president demonstrate the one of the approach, give your enterprises to the trust. Why Ukraine cannot do it? The similarities. Почему?
Okay, so guys, the question is, why does Ukraine need to sell everything? Why can it not transfer its assets to trust? And already all of Ukraine is private, which is not true, because about 60% of GDP is actually in the public space. But maybe, you can answer the question.
Thanks for your question. Actually, you're talking that almost everything is in private hands. So we have, as for now, over 4,000 state-owned enterprises where works about 1 million people. So it's really a lot. If we have about 13 million people working age, 1 million is working in state-owned. It's really a lot. I don't know how many GDP it generates, but maybe 30, maybe 40%. About trust. There is a good experience in the world, but that's why we are talking about with the government of Ukraine, with MERT, about creating a holding company. But we think we should put there only strategic companies, most strategic, like Ukrainian railways, like part of Naftogaz, like Energoatom. We think that only 30, 40 companies should be there. The last should be sold or put to other way of privatization, like management contract, like concession, like joint venture. Because if it's in state hands, it makes losses. Last year, Naftogaz made, before the last year, it made 16 billion hryvnia losses. Energoatom, monopolist, make losses. Ukrzaliznytsia losses. Ukrposhta losses. You think it should be in state hands?
Maybe problem with management.
But management is changing. Every 2-5 years we have new government, new parliament elections, we have new management of state-owned companies.
Maybe problem is the corruption.
Yes, but so we change government, we change management, but corruption is still the same.
That's why you need to sell it to fight corruption.
We need to sell it to private hands and then the owner.
All right, guys, last question.
decide.
Last questions. Do anybody wants? Yeah, okay. There you go. Finally, some life in the debate.
I have one question. Why does it take so much time, basically, to privatize everything? Who is opposing the privatization? Is it government? Is it president? Maybe parliament? Thank you.
So timeline is really quite big. Usually it's from 7 to 9 months because we have to do several important issues. Like 4 major issues is inventory. We should check what is inside this state-owned enterprise because nobody did it maybe for 5 or 10 years if it is quite old as we is. Yes. Next is audit, then evaluation.
But and you had 2 years, as another speaker told. Everything should be sold last year, right?
What do you mean everything?
I mean 3 companies. You had 24 months, and now you're talking that you need only 7 months to get something privatized.
7 months is if enterprise already transferred to state property fund. If its shares of this enterprise is not transferred, just remember Center Energo. For almost 1 year, we were asking Mr. Demchyshin to transfer shares of Center Energo.
So
if it's transferred, then we can start process.
So Demchyshin is basically opposing the privatization of Center Energo, right? You told that Demchyshin is responsible for not privatizing.
No, we asked him. I don't know if he opposed or not. We asked Ministry of Energy to transfer shares, but they didn't.
So Demchyshin?
I don't know. Maybe somebody else.
I know that. Sorry, Yatsenyuk didn't allow it. So and now he's gone. So nobody's to ask this.
But finally, he transferred shares, so he is Okman. I know.
Thank you.
That was a very good question. All right, I want to thank the panel. Thank you very much. I mean, I think you livened things up a little bit, and so we're ready to go to the next panel. Thank you, everybody.